What happens when an arrogant, immortal billionaire tries to publicly humiliate a struggling waitress? He smirked, telling her to take the order of his completely deaf son, expecting her to shatter. Instead, she raised her hands, signed flawlessly, and revealed a secret that left the ruthless king utterly speechless. The crystal chandeliers of Le Ciel Étoilé, Chicago's most exclusive and impossibly expensive restaurant, cast a cold, unforgiving light on Kaya Hayes. At 24, Kaya was used to the crushing weight of exhaustion. She had been working double shifts for the past 8 months, desperate to pay off the mounting medical debts left behind by her late younger brother Toby. Her feet ached, her pristine white apron felt like a straitjacket, and her fake customer service smile was dangerously close to slipping. But tonight, the atmosphere in the restaurant was different. It wasn't just busy, it was suffocating. The air had grown heavy, dropping by what felt like 10 degrees the moment the heavy mahogany double doors swung open. Mr. Harrison, the usually tyrannical restaurant manager, was currently trembling behind the hostess stand, his face drained of all color. "He's here," Mr. Harrison hissed, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead with a monogrammed handkerchief. "I didn't think he actually existed outside of Forbes cover stories and boardrooms. Why is he here?" Kaya followed his panicked gaze. Standing at the entrance was Dominic Ashford. To the human eye, Dominic was the 30-something billionaire CEO of Ashford Enterprises, a man who practically owned the city's real estate and possessed a reputation so ruthless it bordered on mythical. He was devastatingly handsome, with sharp, aristocratic features, raven black hair, and piercing ice-blue eyes that seemed to look right through people. He wore a bespoke, midnight blue suit that cost more than Kaya's apartment. But to those who knew the whispered legends of the city's underground, Dominic was something much older. He was the reigning sovereign of a hidden society. He was an immortal, a vampire king. Kaya, of course, knew none of this. She only knew that he was a man who fired people for breathing too loudly in his presence. Beside Dominic stood a young boy, perhaps 8 years old, clutching the edge of his father's tailored jacket. The boy Leo had the same pale skin and dark hair as his father, but while Dominic's posture radiated dangerous authority, the boy looked deeply isolated. He stared down at the intricate marble floor, completely disconnected from the bustling, wealthy patrons around him. "Kaya," Mr. Harrison whispered, frantically grabbing her elbow. "You take them." Kaya blinked in shock. "Me, I'm in the junior rotation, Mr. Harrison. You usually give the billionaires to Gregory or Sarah." Gregory is having a panic attack in the walk-in fridge, and Sarah refuses to go near him. Mr. Harrison snapped his voice, trembling. Dominic Ashford bought a Michelin star restaurant in Paris last year, just to bulldoze it, because the soup was lukewarm. You are going to go over there, you are going to be invisible, and you are going to get his order. Do not make eye contact. Go. With a harsh shove, Kaya was sent stumbling toward the secluded VIP corner booth where the billionaire and his son had just been seated. As Kaya approached, she felt a strange static in the air, a prickling sensation across her skin. Dominic was leaning back against the plush velvet booth, swirling a glass of dark, thick red wine that he had brought himself in a crystal decanter. He wasn't looking at the menu. He wasn't looking at the restaurant. He was staring blankly ahead, looking profoundly bored with human existence. Leo was sitting across from him, drawing aimlessly on a napkin, with a crayon completely silent. Kaya smoothed her apron, took a deep breath, and stepped up to the table. "Good evening, Mr. Ashford. Welcome to Le Ciel Étoilé. My name is Kaya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with some sparkling water, or I don't eat human food?" Dominic cut her off. His voice was a low, resonant baritone that sent a strange shiver down Kaya's spine. It was smooth, yet laced with a centuries-old arrogance. He finally slowly turned his gaze toward her. His ice-blue eyes were predatory cold and utterly dismissive, He looked at her as if she were a gnat buzzing around his expensive wine. Kaya swallowed hard, trying to maintain her composure. "I apologize, sir. In that case, what can I get for the young gentleman?" Dominic's lip curled into a cruel, mocking smirk. He despised these high-end human establishments, but he had promised Leo a night out in the city. He found humans tedious, predictable, and remarkably fragile. He decided he wanted this annoying waitress gone, and he wanted to entertain himself in the process. "You want to do your job," Dominic drawled, resting his chin on his knuckles, his gaze locking onto Kaya's with intimidating force. "Fine, take his order." Kaya smiled politely and turned toward the boy. "Hi there. What would you—" "I should warn you." Dominic interrupted his voice, dripping with condescension. "Leo is deaf. Completely. He doesn't hear a word, and he certainly doesn't read the lips of the working class. So go ahead, sweetheart. Take his order. Let's see how much you really want that tip." Dominic leaned back, swirling his dark crimson drink, waiting for the inevitable. He had played this game before. He expected her to blush furiously. He expected her to stammer, look helplessly at the boy, mumble an apology, and run back to her manager in tears. He enjoyed breaking the facade of these overly polite servers. He waited for the humiliation to wash over her. Kaya froze. The clinking of silverware from the surrounding tables seemed to fade away. The low hum of jazz music in the background dulled into silence, but Kaya wasn't frozen out of fear, and she certainly wasn't frozen out of humiliation. She stared at the little boy Leo, who was still looking down at his crayon drawing, entirely oblivious to the cruel game his father was playing at his expense. Looking at Leo's isolated posture, a sharp, familiar ache bloomed in Kaya's chest. She saw her little brother, Toby. Toby, who had lost his hearing at age 4. Toby, who used to sit exactly like that in crowded rooms, feeling like he was trapped behind an invisible wall while the world chattered around him. A quiet, protective anger flared inside Kaya. How dare this billionaire use his own son's disability as a punchline to mock a waitress? Dominic watched her silence, his smirk widening. Any second now, he thought. She'll break. Instead, Kaya did something that defied every expectation the immortal king had gathered over the last 300 years. She didn't run. She didn't apologize. She completely ignored Dominic. Kaya stepped around the table, crouching down so she was at eye level with the young boy. She gently tapped the polished mahogany table, twice a trick she knew to send a small vibration to get a deaf person's attention, without startling them. Leo paused his coloring. He looked up, his dark eyes guarded and confused. Kaya smiled. It wasn't the fake, strained customer service smile she had worn all evening. It was a radiant, warm, deeply genuine smile that reached her eyes. She raised her hands, her fingers moving with fluid, practiced grace. "Hello," she signed, her movements crisp and perfectly enunciated in American Sign Language. "My name is Kaya. It is very nice to meet you." The crayon slipped from Leo's fingers and rolled onto the floor. The boy's jaw dropped. His dull, isolated expression vanished in a split second, replaced by a look of absolute, breathtaking wonder. Across the table, Dominic's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. The mocking smirk instantly dissolved from his aristocratic face, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated shock. His immortal reflexes actually twitched. For the first time in over a century, the vampire king was completely caught off guard. Leo sat up straight, his tiny hands flying up in a flurry of excited motion. "You know how to talk to me," he signed rapidly, his eyes shining. "Father said the humans in this city were too stupid to learn our hands." Kaya let out a soft, melodic laugh, completely ignoring the billionaire sitting mere feet away. "Well, your father might not know everything," she signed back, her expression playful. "Sometimes people can surprise you. I had a little brother who spoke with his hands, just like you. What is your name?" Leo. The boy signed his face, beaming with a massive, toothy grin. He hadn't smiled like this in decades. I am hungry, Kaya. I want the most chocolate thing they have in the kitchen, with extra sugar. I think I can arrange that, Kaya signed, winking at him. A giant chocolate lava cake coming right up. Dominic sat frozen in the velvet booth, his mind racing. He stared at the human girl crouching beside his son. She wasn't just fumbling through basic alphabet signs, she was fluent. Her hands moved with a natural rhythm, expressing tone and emotion in a way that only someone who had lived and breathed the language could. But it wasn't just her skill that paralyzed him. As Kaya laughed at Leo's request, Dominic felt a sudden, inexplicable shift in the air. Leo tilted his head, staring intently at Kaya. The boy's hands moved slower this time, his expression turning serious. You have a bright light around you, Leo signed. It smells like the old forest, like the sun before the long night. Kaya paused, a little confused by the poetic nature of the signs. She smiled gently, assuming it was just the vivid imagination of a lonely child. You have a beautiful imagination, Leo. She signed back. I'll go get that cake for you. Kaya stood up, smoothing her apron. She finally turned her gaze back to Dominic. She expected to see anger or perhaps embarrassment that his cruel joke had spectacularly backfired. Instead, she found Dominic staring at her with an intensity that made her breath hitch in her throat. His ice-blue eyes were no longer dismissive or cold. They were burning. His posture was rigid, leaning forward, every muscle in his body coiled tightly. Dominic's mind was deafening. The old forest, the sun before the long night. The boy was describing the golden aura, the scent of the ancient bloodline, a prophecy whispered among the vampire elite for centuries. It was the mark of a human whose blood possessed the power to walk in the daylight, a lineage thought to be entirely extinct. Who are you? Dominic demanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous, vibrating whisper that seemed to echo in Kaya's very bones. The arrogance was entirely gone. He wasn't looking at a waitress anymore. He was looking at an impossibility. Kaya frowned, holding her ground despite the sudden intimidation rolling off the billionaire. I'm Kaya, Mr. Ashford, your waitress, and I'll be right back with your son's order. She turned on her heel and walked away toward the kitchen, leaving the most powerful, feared immortal in the city, sitting in stunned silence. Dominic watched her retreat, his eyes tracking her every movement. His heart, which beat only a few times a minute, began to thud heavily against his ribs. He had intended to mock a fragile human for his own fleeting amusement. Instead, he had just found the one thing he had been searching the earth for. He leaned over the table, his eyes never leaving the kitchen doors where Kaya had disappeared. Leo, Dominic murmured, his voice deadly serious. We aren't leaving this restaurant. Not without her. The heavy swing doors of the kitchen swung shut behind Kaya, muting the quiet hum of the dining room. Her heart was hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She leaned against the cold stainless steel prep counter, pressing the heels of her hands into her eyes. Everything all right, Kaya? She looked up to see Chef Henry, a burly man with a thick French accent and a usually terrifying temper, looking at her with surprising concern. I'm fine, Henry. Kaya lied, her voice shaking slightly. Table 4 needs the molten chocolate lava cake. Extra sugar. Rush order for the VIP. Henry nodded, immediately turning to his station. As he plated the decadent dessert, Kaya tried to steady her breathing. The way Dominic Ashford had looked at her. It wasn't just the predatory gaze of a wealthy man used to getting what he wanted. It felt ancient. It felt like he was looking directly at her soul and cataloguing every secret she had ever kept. When Kaya pushed back through the double doors, balancing the dessert tray, she stopped dead in her tracks. The restaurant was empty. Less than 5 minutes had passed, yet the sprawling, opulent dining room of Le Ciel Étoilé was completely deserted. The wealthy patrons, the whispering socialites, The politicians, they were all gone. Half-empty wine glasses and abandoned plates of expensive caviar sat on tables like relics of a sudden evacuation. Standing by the grand entrance was Mr. Harrison, clutching a leather-bound checkbook, looking as though he might faint. Dominic Ashford remained in his velvet corner booth exactly where Kaya had left him. Leo was still drawing, though he looked up eagerly as Kaya approached. "What happened?" Kaya demanded, setting the chocolate cake down in front of the young boy. "Where did everyone go?" Dominic took a slow, deliberate sip of his dark red wine. "I bought them out," he stated flatly. "I found their ambient noise irritating, and I required a private space to conduct business." Kaya stared at him in disbelief. "You bought out an entire Michelin-star restaurant in 5 minutes because it was too loud." "I bought the building, actually," Dominic corrected his tone, chillingly casual. "The paperwork is being drawn up. Now sit down, Kaya Hayes." The use of her full name sent a spike of ice-cold dread through her veins. She hadn't given him her last name. "How do you know my name?" Kaya asked, taking a defensive step back. Dominic gestured to the empty seat across from him. When Kaya refused to move, his ice-blue eyes hardened. "I do not like to repeat myself. Sit." Reluctantly, Kaya slid into the edge of the velvet booth, keeping her distance. Beside her, Leo happily dug into his cake, occasionally glancing at her with wide, fascinated eyes. "While you were fetching dessert," Dominic began steepling his long, pale fingers. "I made a single phone call. In 60 seconds I learned everything there is to know about you. You are 24 years old. You live in a dilapidated walk-up apartment on Fullerton Avenue, and you are drowning." Kaya felt the blood drain from her face. "Excuse me. You owe precisely $342,850 to Northwestern Memorial Hospital." Dominic continued ruthlessly rattling off the facts with mechanical precision. "The debt stems from the prolonged, intensive treatments of your late brother, Toby Hayes. You work 80 hours a week here and at a local bakery, and yet, after interest, you are only covering a fraction of the minimum monthly payments. By my calculations, you will be evicted by the end of the month." Kaya's hands balled into tight fists under the table. Hot, humiliating tears pricked the corners of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "My financial situation is none of your business, Mr. Ashford. If this is another sick joke to mock the working class, you've had your fun. I'm going to get my manager." "It is not a joke," Dominic said, his voice dropping into that terrifying, vibrating frequency. He reached inside his tailored jacket and pulled out a sleek black titanium card, sliding it across the polished table. "I have already instructed my wealth manager to clear your medical debt. As of 3 minutes ago, you owe the hospital nothing. I have also purchased your apartment building. You live rent-free forever." Kaya stared at the black card, then up at the billionaire. Her mind was spinning. "Why?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "People don't just erase hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt for a waitress." Dominic leaned forward, the terrifying intensity returning to his gaze. "Because you possess something far more valuable than human currency. You are coming to work for me." "Doing what?" "Being my companion." Leo signed suddenly, his small hands covered in chocolate. Kaya glanced at the boy who was looking at her with pleading eyes. "My father's world is very dark. The people in it are cold. You are warm. You speak my language. I want you to stay with me." Kaya's heart ached for the boy, but her survival instincts were screaming at her to run. "I'm not a nanny, Mr. Ashford, and I can't be bought." "You misunderstand," Dominic said softly, though the edge in his voice was razor-sharp. "This is not an employment offer, Kaya. This is an extraction. You have absolutely no idea what you are, do you?" "I'm a waitress trying to survive," Kaya snapped, her frustration boiling over. "You are a beacon," Dominic countered. He leaned closer, the scent of cedar and something metallic washing over her. "Leo smelled the golden aura on you. It is a bloodline trait, a genetic anomaly in humans that was supposed to have been wiped out centuries ago. It makes your blood intoxicating to my kind. And worse, it means you can walk in the sun. Kaya blinked, letting out a harsh, incredulous laugh. Your kind walk in the sun. Are you implying you're a vampire? Is this some kind of cult? Dominic didn't laugh. His expression remained deadly serious. I am the sovereign of the Chicago Syndicate. And now that you have been exposed, now that your scent has flared because of your emotional connection to my son, every parasite in this city will be hunting you by midnight. You will not survive the walk to the train station. Kaya stood up so fast the table rattled. You are insane, she breathed. Keep your money. Keep your titanium card. I quit. She turned and marched toward the kitchen doors, stripping off her white apron as she went. Kaya! Dominic called out a warning growl echoing in his chest. But Kaya didn't stop. She burst through the kitchen, grabbed her heavy winter coat from the staff lockers, and bolted out the back exit into the freezing Chicago night. The alley behind Le Ciel Étoilé was pitch black, save for the flickering amber glow of a single street lamp. A bitter wind whipped off Lake Michigan, driving sharp flakes of snow into Kaya's face as she hurried down the cobblestones. She pulled her coat tighter around her, her breath puffing in white clouds. Her mind was a chaotic storm. He cleared the debt. He bought the building. The words echoed in her head, battling with the sheer absurdity of his claims. Vampires. A golden aura. The man was undeniably wealthy, but he was also completely unhinged. You should have listened to the king, little bird. Kaya froze. The voice didn't come from behind her. It came from above. She slowly looked up. Crouched on the rusted fire escape ladder, 3 stories up, was a man. But his proportions were all wrong. He was far too thin, his limbs elongated, and he was clinging to the icy metal with his bare hands, as if gravity didn't apply to him. Before Kaya could even scream, the man dropped. He didn't fall. He plummeted with the weight of a stone and landed on the icy pavement without making a single sound. When he stood up, Kaya saw his face. His skin was the color of dirty ash. His eyes were completely black, entirely devoid of whites or irises. He wore a ragged leather trench coat, and when he smiled, she saw 2 rows of serrated needle-like teeth. Oh, the scent! The creature hissed, taking a deep, shuddering breath. Alistair was right, the scent of the sun. It's intoxicating. Kaya backed away, her boots slipping on the black ice. Stay away from me, I have mace. She lied, frantically digging into her coat pockets. The creature laughed, a sound like grinding glass. Mace, how adorable. You really don't know, do you? Your little brother didn't know either. Kaya stopped struggling, her blood turning to ice. What did you say about Toby? The creature took a predatory step forward. He had a weak trace of the aura. Just a flicker. Alistair found him a few years ago. We fed on him slowly over months. You humans are so fragile. You called it leukemia. We called it a light snack. The world tilted on its axis. The endless hospital visits, Toby's sudden decline, the doctors who could never quite explain why his red blood cell count was constantly plummeting. You killed him, Kaya whispered, a blinding, white-hot rage overriding her terror. And now we'll finish the bloodline. The creature snarled, lunging forward with impossible blurring speed. Kaya raised her arms in a futile attempt to block the attack, squeezing her eyes shut. But the impact never came. A sound like a thunderclap shattered the silence of the alleyway. Kaya opened her eyes just in time to see a blur of midnight blue smash into the creature, sending them both crashing through the solid brick wall of the adjacent building. Bricks and mortar rained down into the snow. Through the cloud of dust, Kaya saw Dominic. He was holding the ashen creature by the throat, pinning him against the rubble. The creature clawed frantically at Dominic's arm, but Dominic didn't even flinch. The billionaire's bespoke suit was immaculate, completely unbothered by the fact that he had just shattered a load-bearing wall with a body. But it was Dominic's face that made Kaya gasp. His sharp, aristocratic features had transformed. His skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent in the dim light, and his eyes, the cold, dismissive ice-blue eyes, were now glowing, radiating a terrifying, blinding crimson light. "Alistair sent you," Dominic asked, his voice echoing with demonic resonance that vibrated the loose bricks on the ground. "The king!" The creature choked out black blood bubbling at his lips. "You can't keep her. The whole city knows." "Then let the city know this," Dominic snarled. With a sickening wet crunch, Dominic twisted his wrist. The creature's head snapped at an impossible angle. Dominic let go, and the lifeless body crumpled into the snow, immediately beginning to dissolve into ash. Dominic stood slowly brushing a speck of dust from his lapel. The crimson glow faded from his eyes, returning to their icy blue state. He turned to look at Kaya, who was backed up against the freezing metal of a dumpster, shaking violently. The silence in the alley was deafening, save for the howl of the Chicago wind. "I told you," Dominic said, quietly, stepping over the pile of ash. "You would not survive the walk to the station." Kaya stared at the pile of ash, then up at the billionaire. The reality of her world had just been violently ripped apart. Monsters were real. The man standing in front of her was one of them, and her brother's tragic illness had been murder. "My brother." Kaya choked out her knees, finally giving way. She collapsed onto the snowy pavement, the grief she had buried for a year suddenly clawing its way up her throat. "He was murdered." Dominic moved with a speed her eyes couldn't track. In a fraction of a second, he was kneeling in the snow in front of her. He didn't offer fake sympathy. He didn't tell her it was going to be okay. "Yes," Dominic said simply. "Alistair is a rogue faction leader. He targets the weak. If you walk away from me tonight, he will find you. And he will take his time with you." Kaya looked up at him, her vision blurred with tears. "And what do you want with me?" Dominic reached out, his cold, strong fingers gently tilting her chin up. "I want you to be Leo's companion. You brought light to my son's eyes tonight, Kaya. I haven't seen him smile since his mother was killed. In exchange for your presence in his life, I offer you my absolute protection. No immortal in this hemisphere will dare touch a hair on your head. And—" he paused, his gaze darkening with a violent promise. "I will give you Alistair." Kaya sucked in a breath. It was a terrifying proposition. Step into the dark, hidden underbelly of a world she knew nothing about, become a pawn for a vampire king, and abandon her human life entirely. But as she looked into Dominic's eyes, she didn't just see a monster. She saw a father desperate to save his son from isolation, and she saw the weapon she needed to avenge Toby. Kaya wiped her tears with the back of her trembling hand. She looked at the blood-stained snow, then back at the immortal king. "Teach me everything," Kaya said, her voice dropping the tremor. "Teach me how to survive your world, and bring me the monster who killed my brother." A slow, dangerous smile curved Dominic's lips. It was a smile that promised absolute ruin to their enemies. He stood up, offering her his hand. "Consider it done, Miss Hayes. Welcome to the Syndicate." Kaya went from a struggling waitress to the protected weapon of the Vampire King, all to avenge her brother. Will she survive the treacherous, bloodthirsty world of the Chicago Syndicate, or will the golden aura mark her for a brutal death? If you were captivated by Kaya and Dominic's dark romance, smash that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more epic, supernatural stories.